Go ahead, Chris, if you could introduce. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Hey, everybody. I am Chris Carusi, and I am a member of the Madison Metropolitan School District Board of Education. I want to extend a warm welcome to all of the MMSD staff who are watching today, and I especially want to thank all of the staff who submitted questions for this question and answer session with Dr. Carlton Jenkins, who is one of our 2 finalists for the position of superintendent in the district. In addition to Dr. Jenkins, we are joined today by Gloria Reyes, who's our board president. I'm going to quickly introduce Dr. Jenkins here. Dr. Jenkins is currently in his 5th year as superintendent of the Robbinsdale School District in New Hope, Minnesota, which serves a diverse student population. He has held leadership positions in several states, including Wisconsin, Ohio, and Michigan. In addition to 2 superintendencies, his educational leadership roles include Chief Academic Officer, Principal, Assistant Principal, and Physical Education Health Teacher. He received his PhD from the University of Wisconsin, and I think you had your first job out of grad school was at Memorial, correct?
Memorial High School, correct.
Yes. So we are really happy to have you with us today, Dr. Jenkins, and we're going to begin by giving you 5 to 10 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and also answer the question, why Madison?
Oh, most definitely. Well, let me just tell everyone, let me just say thank you, first of all, to the board members for having me here for this interview. And I'm so excited to be back here in Madison. Yesterday, I drove around, went back to Madison Memorial, drove around to several of the elementary schools and middle schools, and it was just like being back at home. But in terms of my education career, I started out, I received my undergraduate degree from Mississippi Valley State University, Historical Black College and University. I got recruited from there to Wisconsin, which was in Beloit, Wisconsin, where I started out teaching in Beloit. And right away after my first year, the administration approached me about going and pursuing my administrative degree. And initially I was like, hey, I just started teaching. I'm really enjoying this. And so they continued to come to me. And so I looked at expanding my roles and responsibilities. So that's how I ended up in Madison at first at UW-Madison pursuing my master's degree. And I had a great time coming up here, and just the professors I had, they were wonderful, gave me an opportunity. Time I finished, I met a principal at Madison Memorial at the time, Carolyn Taylor, and she interviewed me in a mock interview. And it was just like love at first sight when I met her, right? Going over to Madison Memorial High School was just phenomenal. And truly, Madison is where I learned everything about inclusivity in terms of inclusion in education and learning those high standards. And so when I first got to Madison Memorial and just seeing the way that they had inclusionary programs, and that had not been my experience, I took that and said, I want to do this as an administrator any and everywhere I go, and then also seeing the high expectations. So nevertheless, I left Madison, Beloit recruited me back and agreed to pay for my PhD. So I went back, completed my PhD, and before I completed, I was recruited again by someone else to Ohio, and went out there and did that work and enrolled in Ohio State. I was there nearly about to complete my doctorate, and I said, no, I really wanted to finish at Madison. I was recruited back here to Beloit, where I came and finished my PhD, and from there on, it just went into the superintendency world in Saginaw, Michigan. It was my first superintendency. I left there and went to Atlanta Public as the chief academic officer. I was recruited there to help after the cheating scandal. And then when I was there, we completed the work we said we were going to do in 2 years and 1 year. And then I landed where I am right now after this board and the recruiter called me to come to Robbinsdale, Minnesota, where I'm having a fabulous time, and we're doing great work there as well.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I have 15 questions that were submitted by staff, and let's just jump into them. The first question is, how will you increase trust between administration and staff?
First of all, staff are the number one individuals or a group of individuals who have the most impact on our students. You have to have trust with staff. We have to be here to support our staff, understand our staff, listen to our staff, and work with staff as we go to make decisions, be it small or large. And the more time I put in with staff, the more we gain trust with one another, Trust isn't something that's just automatically given because of your position. I've learned that over my career. Trust is being on the ground with the staff, understanding, listening to them carefully. It's not always about feedback. It's about listening, really listening, and then turning the listening into an action plan. So that's the way I go about building trust. And whatever I tell them I'm going to do, that's what I do. And that's the way I build trust with staff.
Thank you. Our next question is, how do you intend to increase morale of staff during a challenging budget year?
Well, I tell you, and I can guarantee you, and actually having reviewed a number of things about Madison here, you experience a lot of what we experienced up in Robbinsdale. During this pandemic, I was just amazed at the way across the country people came together. I was very inspired by that. We were the first school district in the state of Minnesota to close. We closed actually on March 12th. And at that particular time, we thought it was going to be for a couple of days. And we went into our online because we've had online learning now for the last 3 years. We went into an online plan. The more we realized the science behind what was happening with this health pandemic, the governor came out and closed the entire state. During this time, we had to communicate rapidly. And I mean, it was changing by the second, by the minute, by the hour. And what we did was try to just flood staff with communication, having staff involved with it. And I think when you do those types of things, it builds morale. We saw people stepping up, and I can guarantee you it'll be the same way here. Now that we've adjusted, we first got hit with the crisis, and now we know that this is going to be here for a while. You have to bring people in on the decision making so that they can help design the ways that we're going to deliver our instruction. This is different now. This is not us doing distance learning in a short notice. We've had a long notice, so now we have to take the opportunity and take the long view about how we go about planning. And involving staff in all of the planning will make the world of the difference. And actually, they're the ones teaching it, doing it every day. They know what's working in the class, what's not, and then we have to combine that with what's the best research out there about how to deliver this online model. You notice I'm saying online learning versus distance learning. Distance was in a crisis, but now it looks like we're going to be in this. We have to go to online and having students becoming more of an agent of their own learning, and we have to guide them.
Thanks. So our third question, in Madison, we have a strong tradition of union representation for staff. What is your experience working collaboratively with union partners? What has been successful and what has been challenging?
Yeah, I tell you, John Matthews, you know that name by any chance? That was, you remember when we were about to do the strike? That was the year I came to Madison. Okay, so I am very familiar with strong unions. And I also had an opportunity to work in Columbus, Ohio, which also known nationally for having a strong union. I also had a chance to work in Saginaw, Michigan. Michigan itself known for having strong unions. But my style has always been, because when I was a classroom teacher, I was a part of the union. Madeline Shar in Beloit, Wisconsin is the one who mentored me in the union when I first came in, and then told me I had gone to the dark side when I went into administration. But one of the things she did, and she continued to mentor me, and she said, hey, it's about us working together. As an administrator, you don't have to have all the answers. And people resist if something is just done top down. If we're gonna do something, let's do it in the infancy. Let's come together and work through whichever situation. We should be about problem solving. We're all adults, drop the titles, and then we should do fine. So my experience in Michigan, strong union, we established weekly meetings, and we did some very tough work during some very tough times of budget cuts. And at the end of the day, the union and I stood together and did the board presentation, and they shared with the board and with the community. We're on the same page. We have to save ourselves, and the only way that we could do that was together. I think right now I have a great working relationship with my current RFT president. In fact, some of the success that we've had has been because the fact we have a collaboration. We meet too with the leadership team of the union. And now, do we always agree? No. I've never always agreed, or I don't expect someone to always agree with me. We're intellectual beings, and we can bring different things to the table, but it's how we go about behaving once we have disagreements. It just may be not at this time, okay? And we could look to do whatever's in the interest of children and staff, because I do think that you have to take care of our students, but you have to take care of staff. We have to do what's in the best interest of moving our profession along as well.
Thanks. Next question. Staffing within our district is predominantly white and does not reflect the racial, linguistic, and cultural diversity of our student population. What will you do to retain current teachers of color and leaders of color in our district?
Well, let me just tell you, I just come off an investigation this past spring, because when I went in, they told me the majority of our staff are white. We need you to recruit people of color, and we need you to retain them. Well, I did that. And so I hired 41 people, and there was an investigation on 6 people. At first it was 7, but then it turned out to be 6. And the 6 people were all African-American. And so, but I'm gonna follow the process, and we're gonna look to work together, even in our hiring process. I work with our unions to do that. We created the first of its kind in the state of Minnesota. It's a memorandum of understanding, trying to make sure that those individuals who are underrepresented are not the first to be released. If you here and everywhere across the country, typically you can recruit people, but can you retain them? Often there are provisions within our contract that last hired, first fired. But working with the union, it was a collaborative effort to come up with a resolution where we could too retain individuals that we had gone out to recruit. One had the specific talents that we were looking for, and it wasn't just for people of color. This was also for males in the elementary schools. And I don't know if statistics are correct. You don't have many males teaching in the elementary schools here. So that's a underrepresented population. So what I say, what I would do the same thing, come here, see what's the issue. And I've already looked at the data and I noticed that. And that the tenure of the teachers of color is very short at this point. And so we have to talk about that. How do we get there? I don't think you get anywhere overnight. You have to have a process, and you have to have collaboration and thinking. And I think the way we're committed in our district to trying to, and I'm sorry, excuse me, if I'm selected to come here, I say in our district. I meant in Madison, what I noticed that there's a serious conviction in terms of trying to make sure that all students graduate, that they're on track for graduating and they're prepared for college and they're prepared careers and community. Often when students see themselves within not only just a curriculum, a diverse curriculum, but they see individuals who resemble them, they have that kind of feeling, oh, I can do this too. And in fact, I'm one of those students who felt that way as well. That's what I would propose, that we sit down and talk about what are the barriers and then put together an action plan.
All right, thank you. What is your vision for addressing the increasing mental health needs of our students?
I'm pretty much out front and have been for some years now on the mental health piece. I saw the rise in mental health. Some colleagues and myself, we were talking about it probably about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, about what was beginning to happen with kindergarten students, pre-K students. We were at the conference and we were talking about, are you seeing the behaviors escalate of a kindergartner? Choices that they were making was almost on the level with intensity, almost as a fourth grader. And so I've done quite a bit of work with our student services department to make sure that we're kind of ahead of it. Perry, dealing with trauma, we've had Dr. Miles in, and I would do the same thing coming in here, looking at, first of all, I did notice that there are some things already around social emotional and dealing with mental health. That's a big deal here. There are so many things already going on here. I just want to get on the ground and listen to the people and see what's been done. It's not only students, it's staff as well. Whenever you go through a pandemic, like we've gone through, we have this pandemic dealing with COVID-19, but we also have this racial tension that's going on in the country. And we also, on top of that, have civic unrest. Students are going to come back differently, and so will staff. So we have to be prepared. And I saw in the budget that there was some adding of social workers and psychologists. Same thing that we've done, made a provision to have some additional staff in that area when students return and when staff return. We have to take care of our whole selves. And actually, with this particular health pandemic, it's critical that we deal with the mental health because our families are so vulnerable during this point with not only just the virus, but the unemployment. There's so many things that's happening right now. Content, it's hard to get to it if we have not taken care of our students and our staff.
All right, thank you for that. What have been your accomplishments and priorities as a superintendent in support of English language learners?
Oh, huge in terms of what we try to do. We just, in our district right now, I'll give you here, but everywhere I've been, I've tried to focus on how do we become this excellent place? And excellent has to be for all. And when you look at your data, and I always say to the staff, if we really want to be excellence, and even when you look at the core values here in Madison, right? Excellence is right at the top. Then you get down to belonging, right? Then you're looking at racial and social justice. And we say we want to be this premier place where all students are truly ready to participate in the community as well as graduating and ready for college. Our EL students right now I'm sorry, I keep saying already, please don't take that wrong, okay? But just looking at the data, I just got all into it. It's in my DNA about right now. But 21% of the students here in Madison are students who are Latinx representative, and then there are a number of the students who come in who are native speakers. And you have to, when you look at the data, because the students are not performing at a particular level, you have to look at how do I bring together the ELL with the regular curriculum department. And a lot of times in districts, and even in my former districts, what I've tried to do is to bring together the curriculum team along with the ELL, don't have them always spending time in isolation. And I see that there have been some kind of cross-referencing here when I went through the ELL plan, but it needs to be more time for ELL. And I'm gonna go ahead and say in special needs students too. In ELL, you'll find some students who are ELL, but not all, right? And the same things with the special needs. They all need to spend more time with the curriculum team in the infancy, not become an afterthought. And it needs to also be a lot of attention placed on regular communication, more meetings with the parents, and then just listening to what the students are saying, what the parents are saying, what the staff, what they're saying. We ask staff in ELL sometimes to pull off a miracle, but sometimes we don't necessarily give them the right professional development support. So that's the way I would kind of approach it, involving everybody in it, trying to make the students feel like they belong, make their parents feel like they belong, and set a high bar for it. Because if they're not being exposed to grade level content or given a path to get there, if they're below, how do we differentiate and get the students who are supposed to be exposed to grade level at the level? And then there are some ELL students who can accelerate with the more exposure to regular curriculum as well.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What will you do to make sure staff have secure positions, careers, or tenure in light of our current budget shortfalls?
Wow, who said that question? They were just in a meeting with me a couple of days ago. Well, one, when we're in our team meetings, we talk about what are the things that are most impactful in our learning environments. And seriously, our high quality teachers, you have to try to retain them. We were in a budget cycle in one of my places before here, and we had to make some tough choices. And I always say, make the choices as far away from the classroom as possible. We know that we have some things in this pandemic we're not necessarily as confident in terms of what we're going to receive in terms of state and federal funding. And that's why I was glad to see in the proposal, finance person here took a strong, along with the team, because I watched how they came about the budget and following the guiding principles, but they're doing what they can to make sure that it stays as far away from the classroom as possible. And I think you kind of have that commitment, and sometimes just haven't been in education a long time. It happens. Once before, I was on that block when they were doing budgets and they were getting down to the seniority piece, and I was like at the end, and I got saved. But we have to do everything we can to try to keep our cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. And I think the budgetary process that has happened here, to be really frank with you, I think that they've done a really fine job over the last 6 years or so, but I'm looking at the budgets and some of the decisions that they've made to try to retain staff and still maintain the staffing, the board policy ratio for staffing here. And so I would come in, listen to people, work with them, and there may be somebody out there with some better ideas than I have, but I've seen quite a bit over my time. But I know we always get to a good solution in terms of being able to retain our staff when we're working together in it.
Thank you. How will you empower and support staff and students of color?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. First of all, let me say that students of color, staff of color, they've always been around, but it seems like it's even more now an opportunity for voice. I have right now affinity groups, and when I first started affinity groups, some individuals I was accused, oh my goodness, he's being racial. Hey, different people need different things. And the voices of students of color, staff of color, LGBTQ, whomever, students and staff, people need an avenue where they can talk and put it on the table. So first, when I come in, I try to make sure that everyone understands. I'm gonna be for everyone, everyone. The meeting I had the other day in my district, it was an affinity group for non-people of color. And some people said, I can't believe he's having a meeting for non-people. We were talking about the racial tension. Every group needs that. So empowering the students and letting them know and letting them see me and knowing that they have a voice, putting them on various committees. That's what I have done over my career, and I will continue to do that and make sure that they know that they have someone who's going to listen to them. And also I try to have staff making sure that they're going to training. The whole idea in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of breaking down anti-racist practices, this is real. And sometimes people don't even know that they're suppressing and attempting to oppress people. So I would make it very clear to everyone, and I love what I'm seeing here in Madison in terms of the strategic framework at this particular point when you intentionally highlighted that African-American students and other youth, will excel. You're intentional about saying, and some may say, why? Well, you're lifting them up, you're empowering them, you're letting them know that they're important. Staff of color, when they come in the meeting and even being in a union or administrators, are you gonna put them in a position and actually allow them to lead? Or are you gonna put them in a token position? And I will tell you this, and this may hurt me right here, I don't do tokenism, period. Never have and never will. I think you have to get people and put them in a position and then allow them to be people. That's what I would do.
These are really great questions.
They are, I'm like, dang.
All right, well, here's our next one. As the Latino community increases in all schools, what do you plan to do to hire more bilingual and bicultural counselors, teachers, social workers, as many of our students prefer to speak Spanish? How will you ensure students have staff that understand them?
First of all, we have to go to the places where I have so many of my former students, and I have some current students who are going into education. We have to start early relationships with our students while they're in within our grasp in our schools and encouraging them to go into education. But we also have to go to the institutions that have a heavy population of the students that you're looking for. If you're looking for any student, a Latinx student, you're looking for African-American students, where are they? When I'm trying to start a Chinese program, where do I go? Okay, so we do a very good job of it when we're dealing with our linguistical programs. But when we think it's specifically what the students needs, and I wouldn't just put them in counseling. No, they need to be principals. And that's another thing, to give Latinx students the voice and the visuals and say, you just don't have to work just with. I don't believe anyone has to work just with, but I would empower them by allowing them to participate in the process when we do interviews as well. I just hired a principal at one of our top Spanish immersion schools. She's Latinx, Native, and no one thought that that would ever happen. And she just got hired as the principal in that building. But by the way, that kid who's a Native is now a Dr. Burt. And that was powerful. And you need to see the impact. Already just got hired a couple of weeks ago, but it's gone throughout the community that she's in that school. So we have to empower our students by giving them visuals, and we do have to work very hard. And that's another reason for us to sit down, have a collaborative conversation, trying to strike up some kind of agreement that not only that we go hire them, but we have to be able to retain them. Because there's also a message in hiring people who look like you, and then you have to fire them or release them. You know, students take a message from that too, that they're not important. So we really have to work on that together.
All right, next question. Would you be willing to restructure the district office to reallocate resources to serve students more directly?
What has already happened, when I went through the the budget, and I watched how they allocated nearly $7 million. And I think as a part of our roles and responsibilities, we have to see what touched students the most, what's the most impactful. But at the same time, and I tell people this too, you shouldn't be thinking, I'm gonna get rid of everybody. That's not a good human decency thought to me. I think we have to be able to say what is gonna be in the best interest, not only of students, but of staff, everyone. So sometimes there have been situations where I've had to reallocate resources from the central office to touch the buildings. There have been some times when I had tough budget situations, I had to trim down on central office, had to trim down on the custodial staff, had to trim down. To me, when we have our class size ratios, we need to do everything we can to protect that. And I don't know a great administrator worth their salt who wouldn't understand that. We didn't go into this thinking that there will not be some tough days. Now we hope they're few and far in between, and but it's a reality that we face.
Thanks. What has been your experience in serving students whose families are currently experiencing homelessness?
Oh my goodness. When I left Madison, going out, what I learned, I'm talking about like 0.5 miles, right up the road. It was about how can I make a contribution? And I felt like I had received world-class education, and I had some positive experiences as a teacher and as an administrator. The reason I've gone out further, I wanted to see if I could replicate some of the things that I learned from right here. And so, in short, I sought out environments that were really vulnerable, students who were of extreme poverty. Those are the environments that I wanted. And if you follow my career path, you go look at my resume, I chose that. When I went to Saginaw, Michigan, I had an opportunity to go to another district that was very affluent. And I was asked then by my wife, they're both gonna call, which one are you gonna take? And I chose Saginaw. And you can go look up Saginaw for yourself. We had some tough time, budget times. I inherited a district that had a $33 million budget deficit. Right now, they sit at a 26% fund balance. We became a pace-setting district. I believe the things that we get and that we have within us to do, they can be replicated anywhere. So the homeless students, you have to work with those other agencies to make sure that they have everything that we need. That's just part of human decency to me. We have to take the most vulnerable student and give them the most, or give them what they need. That's real equity. We talk about equity a lot, but sometimes some need more than the others. And that's just my philosophy. And we go after the homeless students and do what we need to do for them and their families. And it's bigger than content, just know that too. And so yes, I've had every district I've gone in, I've had a lot of work to do around homeless students. And I sit on the county, typically I sit on the county well-being. So I deal with homeless students, I deal with foster care students, I deal with the students who are the most vulnerable. That's a passion of mine, along with working with special needs students.
Thanks. How will you make sure all students, including LGBTQ+ students, feel safe and welcomed at schools?
When we say all, we mean all. Go-to says that we as a district, right? We want an environment where students, staff, and families all can thrive. Safety is first. I meet with student groups and we have open dialogue. I've been having virtual meetings for a while with just student groups. And I want them to know, and we constantly say, all means all. And so within other student groups, within the staff, within the community, when transgender and some individuals' estimate became a national thing, had already been talking about it. We had already started making moves in our district to ensure that our students were safe. Any student who walks through that door, I don't care their income, their race, their personal choices, they're ours. And so everyone would know that from me. And I'll just be honest, hey, this may hurt me too. If you really want to get to me, pick with students, pick with staff who have their personal choices. That's just where I am. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm really not. And I can't even say that nice to you, even in an interview. It's unacceptable.
All right. Please tell us your best thoughts on support for advanced learners in the district.
I think I also saw the OCR report where, because I looked at the advanced learner plan, and I see at high school, we're running somewhere, again, excuse me when I say we, I'm in the data right now, okay? When I saw that we're running somewhere around 79 to 80% of students in advanced placement courses. And I think exposure to rigor works for everyone, but we have to do those other things of making sure that we're preparing at an earlier age. It starts early when you see some children coming in below grade level, some at grade level, and some are really super, super, super ahead. All learners means all learners. Advanced learners need an opportunity, and I think with the pathway program, some students that we have here, the programs that they can pursue their interests and that they can go over to Madison College, I think that's wonderful. But how you identify advanced learners is the question that I would have more. And when I looked at the process and just responding, I looked at the ESSA report as well. That's what we have to continuously be mindful of. I love the fact that no matter the school and the school's performance, there could be advanced learners within that school. And I do believe if you give children high quality instruction, they may be performing at one level in one environment, and you give them the right exposure, they can come up. More to the point of that, I'm probably one of those kids, being a project kid, having an experience, having a teacher raising the bar, expecting more. That means a world of difference. And then we have to not only just expect more, but we have to give them the right supports. But those advanced learners, they're part of all. So we have to continuously look to see how do we get our district to the point where all means all, and advanced learners shouldn't be thought of as an afterthought. Special needs shouldn't be thought of as an afterthought. ELL should be thought of as an afterthought. I'm back to the curriculum department. And that's kind of like my little area that I like to hang out in, the curriculum department. They have a huge job of trying to make sure that we realize our strategic framework goals.
All right, our last question. How often will you visit schools?
You want me to give you an example of what I do?
That'd be great.
All right, and you can call it as to when I was in Atlanta, we had 111 schools. I arrived in October. By March, I had been at 86 schools multiple times, okay? Right now, our district is a little bit smaller, and I'm in the schools. I know the students, and they know me. And when I see them out in the grocery stores, different places in the community, they say, hey, Mom, he was in our class today. Hey, Mom. But not only myself, our administrative team, our senior leadership team, I believe in the finance director taking a walk with me to go see how we're allocating resources and how it's playing out. So I take the leadership team out to the buildings, and that's what we do. And so frequent, I can't wait. Yesterday, I went driving around. I wanted to see how far was Frank Alice from Madison Memorial yesterday, you know, because just me, just excited and just looking at different things about Madison, just knowing geographically and having 51 schools and trying to get around to all of them. That's what I do. I think we have to, in order to strategically align our priorities, we have to see how it's working out. So I'll be in classes with ELL students. I'll be in class, the advanced learners class. I'll be in classes to see whether or not our African-American students and other youth are being empowered. And so I'm out in the schools. That's the only way I can tell you. And that's been my career. That's what I do as an administrator.
So I'm just going to add to that question a little bit. While you're out in schools, what do you do to engage staff and provide them with feedback?
Well, this is what I do. First of all, I am one who's been Carolyn Downey trained. I try to, only when staff ask me directly, what I do a lot is raise questions with staff to try to get them to reflect on their own practice. I'm not going to make staff say, how did I do? Well, I'm not here to see how did you do. I'm here to get you to reflect more on your own practice. You're here every day. I may have caught the ending of the lesson, the beginning of the lesson, and sometimes it may be something going on, non-instructional. Staff may ask me about it, and I'm open. We talk about it right there if they want to talk about it. But the instructional piece, this is why we have principals, this is why we have our coaches, this is why we have other individuals. And I do train on a national level individuals on the walkthrough process. And so in the walkthrough process, it's more about asking reflective questions. That's what staff will get from me. And they ask me, can you come back? Can you raise more questions with me? You really make me think differently about how it's delivering. And an example of that, just like when you mentioned about ELL, I will ask about the amount of time that that ELL child is in that classroom in a general ed instruction, being exposed to grade level expectations. Ask the same questions in terms if I come in and I see all the African-American males back over to the right, I raise questions that are helping me understand how that's benefiting the students or in the classroom or their level of learning. But I would ask it in a scientific question way though.
All right, well, thank you so much. I want to thank the staff who submitted these amazing questions. And more than that, I want to thank Dr. Carlton Jenkins for your answers, for spending time talking with staff. It's too bad we have to do it on Zoom, but that's the way of the times.
This is the way of the time, but if I may I just say thank you?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you to all of you for coming out to this interview. And I hope that I had an opportunity to give you some insight of how really I operationalize my thinking in terms of the role. And so thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate it. Excited to be back in Madison.
So we want to hear your feedback. If you have things you want to share with us, please email the board@madison.k12.wi.us. Also, if this conversation sparked more questions, we will be on Facebook Live tonight, and we encourage you to join us and ask questions live. Thanks again to Dr. Jenkins and to everybody who's watching, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good day.